So what's buried in there? Okay, what are all of these suppressed and repressed, unacceptable things that linger in the depths of our subconscious? Okay, if this is your mind, conscious mind, subconscious mind, what's down here? Okay, what are all of these things we've just banished and kept locked up? Let's take a closer look at what's inside Pandora's box, if you will. And what you're going to typically find here are unacceptable thoughts, unacceptable beliefs, unacceptable emotions, unacceptable personality traits, and lastly, traumatic experiences. Now, the first thing that I do want you to realize about this is that not all of these things are unacceptable. Okay, they're not all bad, they're not all horrible, they're not all evil, because that's what we think. We're like, whoa, if I kept them down there, that must mean they're just the worst of the worst. Not necessarily. Okay, it's just that they were perceived that way and labeled as such during your upbringing based on the environments that you grew up in and on your perspective at the time. Okay, so for example, a lot of us, guess what's down there? Laughter. Laughing is unacceptable. It's labeled and considered acceptable by a lot of people. Objectively, is there anything bad about laughing? No. Okay, so it's not just these objective bad things. Laughter is one. Okay, a lot of us suppress it due to, again, the environments that we were in growing up and the perspective that we had at the time. If you're growing up in a family where it's just not okay to laugh, like everyone's just extremely miserable, extremely negative, extremely angry all of the time, guess what? If you laugh, the fuck are you doing? Can't you see we're all miserable here? What the fuck are you laughing? Don't laugh. So you're like, I can't laugh. Or if you're mocked for laughing, you laugh, everyone's like, what the fuck? Or they're like, your laugh's ridiculous. There's one, you're like, maybe I look stupid when I laugh. Maybe I look stupid when I smile. And because of your perspective at the time, if I look stupid laughing and I get mocked, or if my parents tell me not to laugh and they withdraw their affection when I laugh, that means that they could, again, they no longer love me, they could abandon me, I could die. Laughing now equals, the possibility of death. Let's never fucking laugh again. This is what I love, by the way, about bringing people up. It's like you can actually use this environment to force you to start introspecting. Because it's so easy and it's our default to just go in circles and be like, I don't know. Well, you better know, or none of these people here are going to get the rest of the seminar. No, I'll laugh. Why do you think? There's always some kind of fear or some kind of label around laughing or letting loose that somehow is unacceptable. Why? Where did that come from? When do you think was like the last time you just really laughed and let loose?
Last time I laughed out.
Like
really
genuine laugh.
Like 1-2 weeks ago.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
All right. What was the situation? What made you laugh? What made you let loose?
It was when I was with my friends and we were just talking about some random stuff.
All right. What about the time before that?
Same when I was with my friends.
How long ago?
3 weeks, 4 weeks ago.
All right. So on average, 2 times a month.
When I look into it, yeah.
It's quite scary.
Yeah.
Everyone should do this type of audit, by the way. If you have to actually think like, when was the last time I laughed? And it's like more than a few minutes ago. Again, obviously say you're working, like, no, don't be like always laughing at work. Or laugh inside, But if it's like, 2 weeks, if it's more than like a few hours, like coupled a few hours, oh my God. Okay, now funny enough, it's like, I brought you up here, but again, everyone can resonate with this. It's insane, and it's, it's crazy. It's like, we always tend to think that we suppress negative aspects, okay? Like this happens usually when we're growing up. It's like you're shamed for different things. So we're shamed usually for anger in our society. It's like we're not allowed to express anger, so we avoid that. But another one is allowing yourself to, one, laugh, and allowing yourself to receive positive feedback. or giving yourself positive feedback. Too often, especially nowadays, it's like there's so much focus on hustling, kicking your own ass, that we never take the time to give ourselves props. We never take the time to express laughter, to take a break. We're just hooked on constantly disapproving of ourselves, constantly beating ourselves up. Along the way, you decided that laughing, letting loose, showing people that side of your personality was unacceptable. Why? Where? How did it happen? When did it happen? Reflect, introspect.
I think when I was younger, I had like strict parents.
All right.
And yeah, so I think it's maybe when I laugh, it feels like, I don't know, something from my past.
What?
I don't know, it brings up maybe like old memories, like when I was a kid, I used to be laughing and stuff, but I did some stupid things, and my parents thought I was gonna be like really messed up. So whenever I laughed, they assumed I was doing like bad things. So
you were shamed for laughing.
yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe that's why I feel ashamed laughing now.
Fuck yeah. Feeling happy, feeling positive, it's the same thing. Man, if I grew up in an environment where it's not okay to do so, in my perspective at the time, it felt like death to do so. Let's keep it down here. Being optimistic, getting excited. You know, if your parents are like, hey, don't get your hopes up. Okay, I better not get my hopes up. Getting my hopes up is bad. Getting excited is bad. Being creative is bad. That was one for me. It's like, hey, it's cool to be creative if you want, but that will get you nowhere in life. Don't be creative. You want to be a poor artist? No. So like, being creative is maybe unacceptable. Being successful is unacceptable. You know, we're conditioned to believe that it's not okay to be successful, to make money. It's selfish. It's superficial. It corrupts. You're like, well, okay, I can't want too much money. I can't blatantly say I want to make money. I can't blatantly say I want fame. We're also conditioned to believe that successful people are cheaters. They cheat the system. They aren't good people. Do you want to not be a good person? You're like, no, I do. I do. So in terms of what you think you deserve, let's just say if this is how much money you make, if you want to make a lot of money, it's like, no, no, no. It's like, okay, I don't want to be unacceptable. So maybe this amount is good. This is the most that I can make without, you know, crossing that threshold of being unacceptable and risking death. Okay, being this corrupt, horrible person. If you're too successful, the way we interpret it, based on the environments and the perspective we have at the time, is we'll die. So we label it as bad. Being loud, being expressive is another one. Singing, as I mentioned before, we're conditioned to never be seen, never be heard, or we would be mocked, shamed, teased. Being authentic. Again, if you express different ideas, different thoughts, different opinions, some are good, some are bad. So all of the bad stuff, again, labeled bad depending on the environment, down here, okay? And it's really subjective. I mean, in some environments, like say you grew up in one family, saying certain things is acceptable, these other things are not, but in another family, you switch the two, okay? So you'll suppress that. Liking a girl, as I mentioned before, if you're a guy. If you're a girl, it could be liking a guy as well. And even just loving and caring about yourself. I mean, that's how crazy it gets. It's selfish. Put other people's needs above yours. Who do you think you are? Are you so selfish you're going to care about yourself? So you're like, oh man, it must always be other people. I can't love myself. I can't care about myself because it's selfish. So even loving and caring about yourself is down here in Pandora's box. All those bad, horrible things, loving and caring about yourself. So really realize this, okay, it's not all quote unquote bad. What it really comes down to is how these things were perceived at the time. And it's the same as a little side note with traumatic experiences, okay? Different traumatic experiences, you don't want them to interfere with the conscious. You're also gonna quickly suppress, however, most of the time, because they're so traumatic, they are repressed, like they don't even consciously register. But trauma does not just come from horrible, extreme things. You know, we think, whoa, traumatic experiences must be accidents, extreme injuries, catastrophes, war, violence, physical assaults, abuse, rape, etc. Like, that's trauma. Of course that is trauma. Okay, it's a threat to someone's life and their survival. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be one of those like extreme, objectively traumatic things. As children, guess what? It all comes down to our perspective at the time. Something like getting lost in a store. I remember that happened to me. I was lost in a store for a while. I'm like, whoa, where are my parents? Abandoned, possibility of death. That there is a traumatic experience. Based on the environments I was in and the perspective I had at the time, that was extremely traumatic. That fear of, oh my God, I might lose them. I might be abandoned. Okay, it's all about how I was perceived. Watching a movie as a kid could be a traumatic experience. You know, if you're watching, say, Jurassic Park, you know, you can't differentiate, because you're so young, fiction from reality. And when you see something like, oh, so scary that just overwhelms you, and you're like, oh, my life's in danger. Oh my God. That goes down there as well. Okay. I mean, another weird one for me, I remember this is one of my earliest memories. I was in Hawaii when I was I think 3 years old. And I was, from what I heard, just swimming all week with my family. I was on vacation and just having a blast. And on the last day, I went on my dad's shoulders, and for the first time I looked down in the water, and again, totally random, but for the first time I saw fish. Totally weird. First time I saw fish, and I just freaked the fuck out. I was just like, oh my God, what is this? And just like, my dad kind of joked like, oh, let me throw you in. I was like, no, like freaking out. Although objectively, is that traumatic? Fish? No. But the way it was perceived, fish. And for the longest time, I had this phobia of fish. Like, it didn't logically make any sense. It all came from that traumatic experience that I immediately just, I never want to think of that again. I never want to experience that again. You just shove it down. Okay? So trauma is basically anything, these traumatic experiences, are anything that is perceived as life-threatening or overwhelming, unbearable, intolerable based on your perspective. Okay? And none of us are immune to it. We all experience trauma, regardless of how good your childhood may have been. Okay? If right now you think you have no trauma, you're telling yourself a lie. However, what tends to happen with trauma, and this is what's quite interesting, is that, as I mentioned, they are repressed. So that's why right now you don't necessarily remember all these traumatic experiences. They're so intolerable at the time. They're so overwhelming that they don't even consciously register. You just immediately dissociate from them. You just immediately act as if they never happened. They're not part of you, and you repress them. Okay, creating that sensation that, hey, nothing happened. Nothing's affecting me. Consciously, you don't know. Consciously, you don't even remember, but there's nowhere for them to go. Your subconscious always remembers. And we all have this. A lot of repressed traumatic experiences that we're not aware of that run us. And this is why, again, we have different tendencies in our life, different patterns that kind of emerge. We're like, how did that happen? It's the unknown that is running you, which is another reason you really need to dig all of this up and let it go. And I mean, yeah, this is really what you will find in the back shadows of your subconscious. Okay, unacceptable emotions are also extremely common here. Things like anger, jealousy, anxiety, hurt, for example. You know, it's like it's not okay to cry, not okay to show any weakness. So you're like, wow. Crying, being weak, completely unacceptable. You know, it's, after a while, like, it's not okay to feel. Feeling is unacceptable. Feeling is bad. This is like super fucking common, especially for guys, because guess what? As a guy, it's like you cry, you're a pussy. You're not a man. If you cry, you show emotions, pussy. So what you do is you kind of view crying or being emotional as bad. And usually this will happen like when you're younger and you just fucking suppress that shit. And you've suppressed it for so long that even for you to like bring it back up, basically, like if you think of that letting go exercise, you're gonna have to let go first of all of the resistance surrounding crying to then get to it. So it's like you got to fall through it's like there's a resistance layer. This even happens sometimes with emotions and shit. It's like you'll have like, you'll be really mad, and then you kind of like go through the madness, and then you realize like it's hurt. You know, it's like covers that shit. So for you, it's like there's crying, and there's like all this resistance and fear in a way covering the crying, because for so fucking long it's like crying is bad, crying is bad, crying is bad, crying is bad, can't cry, can't cry. You do that long enough, your subconscious takes over, you'll never fucking, like, you'll just not go there.
I just remember this. When I was a kid, 4 or 5, I was the youngest kid, and with all my like first cousin, like I come from Pakistan, so like we have like a very close cultural thing where all the cousins are like fucking brother and sister.
Yeah.
So every time I would cry, my aunt, uncle, dad, mom, cousins, big brother, you know, everybody would be like, soldiers don't cry, and you know, Spider-Man doesn't cry, and you know, everybody that I looked up to, like, you know, I wanted to be a bodybuilder when I was like 5, so like bodybuilders don't cry, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think like by the time I was like 10, 11, 14, I solidified stuff like crying is bad, because you know, men don't cry and stuff like that, so I think that's where I come from.
And another one that a lot of people have is that they banish any kind of disagreement or just confrontation. Okay, not physical confrontation, but whenever there's like a disagreement and there's that tension, they're taught that that is bad. And this is the birth of the people pleaser, where it's you know, unacceptable to say no. For example, you're like, whoa, say no, then I'll then experience this confrontation, this disagreement. Oh, I can't ever disagree. You're traumatized to disagree, and yeah, I mean, this is the people pleaser. You have no personal boundary. If you want to know if you're a people pleaser, ask yourself if you've ever said yes when you wanted to say no, and if you've ever said no when you wanted to say yes. If so, there's some shit down here. Okay, so this is what you will find in the depths of your subconscious.